Hello there. In this video, I'm going to be explaining something you might have seen in my videos before. Whenever I bring up the name of like a track that I'm using as background music in a lot of my videos, sometimes it'll say null and void next to it. In fact, a lot of the time, really. So I realized I should probably make a video on this channel explaining what that is. Essentially, the reason why it's been quite a while since the last time I put out any music is because I've spent a lot of time working on a soundtrack for a game that I hope to make. That game obviously being Null and Void. I started working on it about a year and a half ago, and since I've gotten to, I believe, 34 tracks completed at this point. Essentially, I'm an enormous fan of Earthbound likes. Undertale got me into them, and from there, I found other games that I've loved just as much, like One Shot and Amori and stuff like that. And obviously, I want nothing more than to be able to make a game like that myself that I can be proud of. So that's what Null and Void is going to be. It's something I plan on coding myself, as well as making all the music for myself. The only thing that I'm nervous about is the art. So far, I've been doing all the art I need myself as well, but in terms of drawing, that's definitely like the place where I'm the weakest. Now, luckily, it is going to be pixel art style, and I am better at pixel art than any normal kind of art. But even still, obviously, that's rough for me, so I don't know if at some point I might look into getting artists to help with that, but I'm going to try and get as far as I can completely on my own. Now, all that being said, while obviously I do hope that you're interested in this, I also want to make it clear that, oh, don't get all hyped and, oh my god, when are you going to bring it out? When are you going to finish the game? When's it going to be done? Because it's going to be years from now, most likely. Obviously, this is a pretty big project I want to undertake, and I want it to be very, very good, and something I can be very proud of when it's done. And when I'm going to be working on it almost entirely on my own, yeah, that's quite a tall order. So much so I could even understand if some of you are skeptical I'll even ever do it. Because in fairness, in the past, I'm mostly talking about geometry dash levels in fairness, which isn't the same thing, but I have fallen into the trap of taking on big projects and having really good ideas and really wanting to finish them and putting lots of time into them, and then just eventually getting burnt out, and then by the time I'm done being burnt out, I don't really care about it anymore, and then I come up with a new idea and I drop the old one, and nothing ever gets done. I just have a bunch of cool ideas, but nothing ever gets finished. Obviously, though, I wouldn't be making this video if I didn't think that won't be the case with this one. And because I'm very aware of how I've, in the past, been able to get burnt out on things I was really passionate about before I get them finished, and then never get to finish them in the end. From the very beginning, when I decided to actually start working on this, I decided that I should do it slowly but constantly, as in not have these long gaps of not getting anything done, but also not putting any pressure on myself to get a hell of a lot done in this much time or whatever. So in terms of what I've actually done so far, there's obviously the story, which I have planned out almost entirely at this point. There's the music for the game, which I already mentioned. I've got 34 tracks finished at this point. Now, I don't know how many tracks I'm going to need, because especially when I get to actually making the game, I might realize I need more music for this and more music for that. But if I was to take a random guess, I would say somewhere just under 100, because I really obviously want the soundtrack of this game to be stand out, since I'm literally going to be making it myself, and because most of these games that I look up to themselves have amazing soundtracks. That might sound kind of disheartening that, oh, you spent all this time working on it and you're only like, what, a third of the way to having the amount you think you'll need done. But I think I'm actually more than halfway, most likely, because a lot of the tracks that I have made are going to be some of the more elaborate and, you know, important ones. And I feel like a lot of the ones that I'm going to need to make from now on are mostly going to be smaller ones. For example, it's not really important, but I'm thinking that I'll probably add a little, like, mini-game where you can play cards somewhere in the game. And I don't have any music for that mini-game, so I'll probably have to make some music for it. But considering it's not really an important part of the game, I could probably just make a relatively quick and catchy loop and just call it a day, and there you go, that's another track added. Whereas some of them, most of them being the ones that I've gotten out of the way first, are obviously going to be much bigger endeavors where I spend multiple weeks or maybe even months working on a track to make it sound real good. As for the art, I've got like overworld sprites for all of the major characters, and I've got like a lot of portrait sprites, as in like the kind of image you see whenever they come up with like text as they're talking. Got a few hundred of those done, although admittedly a lot of the other art I'm going to need is something that I still need to do. I've only got a few kind of tile sets done, so that's probably the next thing I'd be prioritizing. Obviously, the biggest standout thing here, which I want to make clear, is I have not started coding this game yet, and that's for a few reasons. Not necessarily because I don't want to start working on it. There have been times where I've been tempted to start on it, but I've mostly been focusing on making the assets I'm going to need for the game before actually coding it so far, because there are a couple of things I'm going to have to decide when I first start making it, which are going to be pretty difficult to reverse later if I change my mind. Probably the biggest, most obvious one is, what do I code the game in? Now, the simplest answer to that would be Unity, and that's what people have recommended I do. It's obviously a very good game creation engine, and it's programmed in C#, and I'm very comfortable with coding in C#. The only thing is that There are a couple drawbacks with Unity, and they shouldn't be all that relevant, but they might be. First of all, the one that I don't think will be relevant is that because C# is a language which is somewhat simplified while still not exactly simple, there are some times where it will do less memory efficient things than it could do to get a job done, because to make it do it a more memory efficient way, you would have to get into much complicated stuff that you can only do in C++. So that brings me to the other possibility. What if I instead coded the game in C++ using DirectX? That's where things get a little bit messy, because I am undergoing a course right now to learn to code in C++ and create games, a computer science course, and from what I've learned, I should in theory be able to do that. However, since I've learned that, I've never really had the free time to stop and start making a game in DirectX. So although I think I know everything I should, I've never actually made a game in DirectX before. Coding the game in C++ using DirectX would be a lot more complicated. However, it would, for one, be a lot more memory efficient, so that you could run the game more easily on lower-end computers and all that. But also, it could potentially let me do some things that Unity wouldn't, that would be really outside the box. I'm being a bit vague, because what those things could be would obviously vary depending on the situation, but I like the idea of having some puzzles in the game that have very outside-the-box solutions. You could probably guess I'm talking kind of one-shot style. I mean, an example I guess I could give is I like the idea of a puzzle which is seemingly impossible to solve, but then if you just simply take the game window and you like shrink it down so that something that you could see in the puzzle before is now off screen, it causes that thing to stop existing and solves the puzzle. Stuff like that, which obviously is a really cool and clever idea, and I want to do something like that. However, I'm not sure if that's something you're actually capable of doing in Unity, whereas I know for a fact you can do that in DirectX. The other thing is a more general one, but I am not quite finished with my computer science course, and while I think I should know everything I need to, also just as a kind of precautionary thing, I don't really want to start making it until I feel like I've learned everything I need to. If I start making it, and then later realize the fundamental way that I've decided to build the game to work is a less effective way than something else I could have done that I only learned about later, then the only solution will either be to continue going about it the less efficient way, or to completely restart. And obviously I would hope that a situation like that doesn't happen. So all that said, I might start coding it at some point soon, or at least maybe a prototype of it, just so I can kind of get a feel for what I might be doing. But either way, for the most part, at the moment, I'm still focusing on just creating assets for it. All this to say, again, while I am telling you about the fact I'm doing this, just so that I'm not radio silent while I'm spending time working on this game and maybe not as much time producing more dubstep tracks, I also want to make clear that while I will keep you updated on what I've been making, and I don't think this game is going to be finished anytime in the next couple of years, at the very least. So I don't want anyone to be like, oh my god, I can't wait, I'm sure he's going to have it done soon. Nah, it's going to be a while. Some people have been asking me to put the music that I've been making for Null & Void up on YouTube. So far I have been putting the music up, but not very openly. It's up on my Newgrounds and available to use in Geometry Dash levels, but only 13 of the tracks that I've made so far, which is obviously only about a third of them. Almost every single one I've made is available for download on my Discord server, but obviously a lot less people are going to see it there. Up until this point, I'd refrained from putting them on YouTube, just because, for one, I'm super mixed about, telling you guys about this, because on one hand, obviously I'm very excited and passionate about it, and I'd love to tell you about it, but on the other hand, I also worry, obviously, about being irresponsible and blabbing too much about what I want to do before I've actually done it. And I was worried for a bit that maybe if I start putting up all this music, that I'll set up an expectation and that I might not deliver on it, and maybe people thought the game would be coming sooner if they see music being posted to my channel already, and then years pass and it's still not done and I still haven't seen much of it, and it's like, oh, what are you even doing, But also, I'm not gonna lie, one of the biggest reasons that is one that I've realized in hindsight is kind of stupid, and that is, I really wanted to, when I uploaded the music, which I was going to do at some point, have it all uploaded in chronological order, or at least as close to it as possible, from when they appear in the game if you were playing through it. And I kind of didn't want to upload them in a scattershot order. But of course, I've not been making every track in chronological order necessarily. So now if I make another track that's meant to be used at the start of the game, but I'm already putting out tracks that might be used closer to the end of the game, obviously that isn't going to work. But considering that uploads have been slower here, I think I owe it to you to put some of this music out there. I know that some people have been particularly big fans of a couple of the battle tracks that I put out for the game. And lastly, I realised something which made me feel really dumb. If I really cared that much about having them all ordered, I could just simply, rename the videos once they're all done and put them all in a playlist in order, so that it has the number of each one on the title now, and they're all in an ordered playlist. I don't know why I didn't think that at first. So anyway, that'll start coming up soon. It's going to start by just re-uploading all the ones that are up on Newgrounds already, but I might start putting up some new ones soon. Well, I say new. Ones that until now were only available on my Discord server. Very last thing though, for all I've talked about this game, you might be wondering why I haven't said a single thing about the story of the game yet. Well, ultimately, I feel like what makes the story interesting is the characters that I've made. And without knowing what the characters are like, it probably won't seem as interesting. But as well as that, I think that it's very kind of boring to just sit here and try and describe in words what the personalities of the characters are like, rather than just having them kind of show themselves. But to do that, I actually have to have, parts of the game ready. But to give you an extremely short version of like the pitch of what's supposed to be going on in the world of the game, you play as this character, Grey, who's obviously supposed to be kind of a blank slate character like Frisk in Undertale, or any other kind of blank slate character. And the last thing you remember is that you started falling into the void, a place where supposedly nothing exists. And you remember passing out because there was no air to breathe in the void and you suffocated. But now you've come back to consciousness, and there's actually air even though you're still falling. Until eventually you actually end up landing in a pool of water and finding that there is an entire world down here, even though there was supposed to be nothing here. It was just really, really deep down. So essentially the story of the game is just exploring this new world and finding if there's any way to get out of it. Which is why, as I mentioned, I didn't think it'd be as interesting to talk about the story, because obviously that's a very kind of basic story. I am fully aware of that, but I think that I don't have to change it just because it seems a bit kind of typical. I have actually for years kind of been thinking of different ways I could go about making a game with a story kind of similar to Undertale, and a lot of the other ones in the past that I kind of just gave up on and never really went anywhere with, a lot of them had a common kind of problem of, I would think of an idea, I'd think maybe this is a cool idea, and then I'd think, no, actually that's too similar to this is too cliche, let me think of something different. And then it would be, okay, I've got this idea, but wait, that's too cliche, let me think of something different. Wait, okay, now I've got this idea, it's still too cliche. And I kind of realized that almost everything sounds too cliche until you can make it deeper, until you can get to the point where, like, you've fleshed it out more, and it's got more unique features about it. Until you really go in depth, when you just, describe the basics of what a story is, almost everything can be thought of as cliche. All that to say, yes, I am very aware that falling into this mysterious new world and trying to find if there's any way to get out, that, yeah, you fall in a, pool of water, oh, it's like a golden bed of flowers, sounds very similar to Undertale. Look, I'm trying here. But in all seriousness, I genuinely think that if I tried to force the story to be something else just so it's not as similar to Undertale, it would fit less well with what I already have, and if anything would just kind of hurt the quality of the story, so that's why I decided to stick with it, even though I do realise it sounds very similar to Undertale's start. Anyway, all that said, thank you for watching all this, and I'll see you in the next one.